Hello everybody, and welcome to this, my first of 3 videos on the Canon EOS Rebel T5, which is also called the 1200D and the Kiss X70. The EOS Rebel T5 is an interchangeable lens DSLR with an APS-C 18 megapixel CMOS sensor. You'll just have to trust me, it's back there. It has a 63-zone dual-layer multi-mode meter with IFCL evaluative center-weighted and 10% partial and metering modes. Okay, so let's unpack that because there's a whole lot there. 10% partial is basically spot metering. The 10% center, the center of the image, that 10% right there, about this much of the image, is responsible for 100% of the metering mode. I believe, if I recall correctly, there is a way, and if so, we'll see it in the third video, to link the spot metering point to your AF point. I think so. I'm kind of hammering out a whole bunch of these videos right now, and I'm doing like a dozen different EOS Rebels, so they're all kind of bleeding together. I think I remember that about this one. Anyway, moving on. Center weighted is just standard center weighted, meaning that there's an area, it's about the size of this lens cap, or body cap rather, in what you would see in your viewfinder, that's responsible for around 60 to 75%. I can never find the exact amount with Canon cameras of the metering information, and then the periphery is responsible for the balance. Okay, but now this is where things start to get complicated because we're going to cover the 63-zone dual-layer multi-mode meter with IFCL evaluative. Okay, so dual-layer, well, 63-zone is easy. That means that the metering area is divided into 63 zones that contribute in different ways to the metering information that's used to come up with the shutter speed and aperture settings the camera uses. Dual-layer means that the metering mode sensor, so the camera's sensor, is not used for metering. There's a separate sensor somewhere up here in the prism, and that's what's used for metering. It has 2 layers. So basically, if you imagine that you're looking at it sideways, there'd be a top and a bottom layer. The top layer sees green light and blue light, and the bottom layer sees green light and red light, and then the camera combines data from those 2 layers of sensor to calculate the exposure. So that's what the dual layer means. IFCL means Intelligent Focus, Color, and Luminance, which is the type of evaluative meter that this camera has. That means that the meter evaluates the lens's focus, the color in the scene, and the luminance in the scene to select the best aperture and shutter speed combination for your photo. That's actually quite a bit of calculation that's going on inside this camera. It's got a very impressive meter. No argument there. Moving on, the EOS Rebel T5 has shutter speeds of 30 seconds to 1/4000th of a second and bulb with a 3 frame per second burst rate in both RAW and JPEG. The buffer for RAW images is 6 files, and the buffer for JPEGs is 12. The viewfinder magnification, and this is the viewfinder right here, is 0.8x, and it has a 95% frame coverage. So let's unpack a little bit about what that means. 0.8x means that what you see in the viewfinder is 80% of the size of what's going to be on your image's sensor. 95% frame coverage means that if we assume for a moment that what you're looking at right now is what's going to be on your image sensor, then about 2.5% of the frame on each side and the top and the bottom will be on your sensor, but not in your viewfinder. That means you can completely fill the frame in your viewfinder and still have a little bit of room, not much, but a little bit, for cropping and adjusting your images in post. The camera's ISO range is 100 to 6400 plus auto, and the sync speed is 1/200th of a second. It is also capable of shooting 1080p video. The Canon EOS Rebel T5's the target market when it came out, was the beginner, and we know this because it's a Rebel camera. All of the Rebel cameras, as well as the 4-digit cameras in South America and the EU, and the Kiss cameras in Japan, those are all the same tier and they're all the entry-level tier. At the time that this was released, it was the lowest tier entry-level camera in the Canon lineup. So Canon has this highly striated lineup of cameras, always have. Right now, as I'm recording this, they're at a much different point because they don't have quite as many striations, but they tend to have anywhere from 7 to 12 or so different tiers of camera. So this was the entriest of the entry-level cameras when it came out. It was made by Canon in Taiwan from 2014 until 2016, preceded by the T3, which was the 1100D or the Kiss X70. In the 2 years that this was made, Canon produced 18 additional DSLRs, just a ton of different cameras in that time. That's a lot. That's more than anyone else in the market. And it was followed directly by the T6, which was called the 1300D or the Kiss X70. So if you have your Canon EOS Rebel T5, the next thing that we're going to do is go over all of the features on it and talk about what they are. In the second video, we'll talk about what they do and how you can use the camera's features to affect, influence, and benefit your photography. And then, of course, in the third video, we'll go over all of the menu items and talk about how those make your camera function exactly the way that you want it to, within the confines of its technical capabilities. So starting here on the top, on the sides here, we have the strap bars, and this is where you would connect your camera strap. This is the speaker, so that when you play video back on the camera, you can hear audio. This is the pop-up flash right here. Camera hot shoe. This is your mode dial. We're going to spend a whole bunch of time on this in the second video. This allows you to control all of your different shooting modes. On-off switch. Symbols for your asterisk and autofocus select button. Flash pop-up button right here. I love doing that. Oh, forgot this little index right here is the index that marks which item you're selected to on your mode dial. Command wheel and front shutter button. Well, only shutter button, but this is your shutter button right here. On the camera's front, we have the autofocus assist light and red eye reduction light right here. Lens mount. This is the EF mounting index and the EFS mounting index, and we'll talk about this in detail in video 2. Lens release, make and model, and then here is a microphone that you can use to record audio on camera. On the camera's back, we have the viewfinder, the diopter adjuster, the LCD screen right here. This is the live view and movie mode combo button. It will switch into live view, or if you are in movie mode, it will start and stop movie recording. This is your AV button, also called the exposure compensation button. We'll see how to use this in the second video. We'll see how to use all of these buttons in the second video. This is your quick menu button, display on-off, ISO selection, autofocus selection, drive mode, set button, white balance, menu, playback, zoom in or asterisk button. I'm sorry, zoom out or asterisk button, zoom in and autofocus point select button, SD card access lamp. You can see that the blue button, the play button here is blue. Any of these functions in blue, those only apply when you're playing back images. On this side, we have a whole lot of nothing. On this side, we have 3 ports. They are, I gotta double check, I gotta read what it says. Okay, up here, this is your cabled remote port right here. So if you have the cabled remote, you plug it into this top port. Then the middle one is your mini USB port right there. It's for mini USBs, and that's an HDMI port on that on the bottom. On the camera's bottom, we have the battery chamber right here, and I'll show you how to change the battery in the second video, and we'll talk about what kind you need. Tripod socket, all of your certification info, and then your serial number right there. So let's talk about some things not to do with your camera. Don't store the camera in a plastic bag or box unless you have a good rechargeable desiccant pack to put in there and you keep it recharged. The reason for that is just that moisture can permeate plastic, and if moisture gets into your camera, it can cause mildew to grow in the rubber. It can cause fungus to grow in your optics, including the viewfinder up here, and just kind of make your camera less effective or unenjoyable to use. Or in the worst case, it can even ruin your lenses. Don't touch the mirror and the shutter if you can at all avoid it, simply because that's a good way to make your camera less effective or potentially brick it. Don't let this get wet. It is not weather sealed. and water getting into the electronics could short it out and completely ruin the camera. Also, don't leave this in your car. And there are a few reasons for that. If your car gets very hot, as they tend to do in the summer, then the lubricating oils in here can get into places they shouldn't be. And when the camera gets back up to temperature, then there's lubricating oils that had been thin and now are thick and things don't work correctly. Worst case scenario would be that the plastic on this could theoretically warp in high heat. If you are of a certain age and own CDs and ever left them on the back of your car for some days and came back and found that the plastic on the CD cases had all warped and your CDs were just kind of popped out all over, the exact same thing could theoretically happen. The other thing is that in the cold, the lubricating oils can get in here, can break down, and once they do, then they become thick and gummy. The other thing is that with the cold and the plastic and the electronics, not a great combination. Cold is especially hard on rubber grips. And then, of course, the last thing is somebody who is interested in a camera and not paying for it and willing to break a window to have their own camera, seeing your camera on the seat could potentially then have your camera. So just remember that your Canon EOS Rebel T5 is a precision tool and it should be handled with care and respect. As long as you take care of your camera will take care of you. So that's it for the first video. In the second video, we'll talk about how to do all of the things that this camera's outward-facing stuff can do. And in the third video, we're going to go through all of the menu items and custom functions. See you then. Thank you everyone for watching. If this video was helpful and useful to you, please give me a thumbs up. That lets me know that I'm on the right track and that I'm producing and creating content which is helpful to you. If you have any questions, comments, or suggestions, please leave those in the comments section below. I'm pretty good about responding every couple of days and answering whatever questions you have to the best of my ability. If you'd like to subscribe to find out when I have more videos about how to use cameras, photographic techniques, or the best practices for the tools of the trade, by all means, please subscribe and check that notifications bell to be alerted when new content arrives. If you'd like to support the channel by joining with a membership, there are now membership options for this channel at different tiers that will give you different benefits if you would be interested in that. And one last thing, thank you everyone very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next videos. Won't we, Steinbeck? What's that look about?